This is my farm.
Don't come out here and tell me what I need.
I need solutions that work and market options that are worth my time.
Small town support that sees the bigger picture.
A global network that empowers us. A co-op that's there for us every day.
Thank you for joining us for our Agri-Pulse Washington Week in Review. I'm Spencer Chase, joined as always by Agri-Pulse Executive Editor Phil Brasher, discussing the week that was, agriculturally speaking, in Washington, D.C. And in Washington, D.C. this week, probably the biggest news of the week came here on Thursday. We're recording here on a Thursday afternoon, and the Trump administration officially rolling out its replacement for the Obama administration's Waters of the U.S. rule, calling it the Navigable Water Protection Rule. So that's an acronym that I'm guessing we're going to spell out instead of say. It doesn't really, there's no vowels, it doesn't lend itself to a pronunciation. But what it does lend itself to is the analysis of removing some of the protections that were offered under the Obama-era WOTUS rule, including removing the ephemeral streams protections that were under the Obama rule. Some other similarities, not a whole lot of differences at this point, as we can tell, between the proposed rule that the Trump administration previously offered and what we saw finalized here today. Still needs 60 days to officially be final once it's in the Federal Register, but Phil, you and I and many others know this is something that's inevitably going to go to the courts.
Oh yes, and potentially all the way up to the Supreme Court eventually. Interesting that they did choose this name, Navigable Waters Protection Rule, because the real issue, the Clean Water Act is very clear for 50 years that navigable waters are regulated by the federal government. The question becomes, is those waters that feed into the navigable waters, and where does the line fall between federal and state regulations? Now, the Obama administration, taking a previous Supreme Court ruling, had expanded, particularly including to include some new wetlands in the jurisdiction. This new rule rolls it way back from where the Obama administration was. Much tighter limits on what is federal jurisdiction, leaving a lot more out there in the landscape to states to regulate.
Mm-hmm. And this is something that had been, if not priority number one, maybe priority 1A for a variety of the ag groups in DC and across the country here for the last couple of years. They viewed it, the Obama-era rule, as just a huge expansion of federal power, the ability to see that rule rolled back a little bit. A lot of folks breathing a sigh of relief in Washington, as Phil and I can both attest to our inboxes being flooded currently with a number of statements from ag groups supporting what the Trump administration is doing here, and a number of environmental groups not necessarily pleased.
Well, that was for the reasons we just outlined. Yeah. It really pulls back on federal regulation of wetlands and those ephemeral streams that you talked about. So no surprise, environmental groups don't like it. The question is, how much will the public hear about this with all of else that's going on the Senate side of the Capitol this week with the impeachment trial?
Yeah. And we're currently over on the House side of Capitol Hill, and in the area where folks will typically set up for their network hits and whatnots. And still pretty busy over here. a lot of activity on the Senate side of Capitol Hill in particular this week, but Capitol Hill in general. And it's interesting, this Waters of the United States rule, a lot of folks wondering if this was something that was going to be announced earlier this week when President Donald Trump took his trip to the American Farm Bureau Federation's annual convention in Austin, Texas. Phil and I were both there when he spoke and addressed members of AFBF. We were expecting, a lot of folks were expecting a speech kind of focused on water policy, potentially a rollout of that new rule, but what we ended up seeing, Phil, was sort of, for lack of a better term, a victory lap of sorts over some of the successes that the administration feels they've gotten over trade policy, specifically China, USMCA, and Japan.
Yeah, coming right after the release of the Phase 1 China agreement and the the final Senate vote on the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement was no surprise. He also talked a lot about those trade deals, but also talked a lot about other regulatory changes that he's made and will be making. It was very much a ticking off what he saw as the accomplishments for farm country.
And also what a lot of farmers see as accomplishments for farm country as well. Very, very supportive, very friendly environment he was speaking to in there.
Exactly, yes.
Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue also making an appearance at Farm Bureau had some commentary about just how he expects the Department of Agriculture to be involved in this China Phase 1 deal, and a lot of that has to do on the enforcement side, reporting the sales that they're seeing to China, reporting that to the United States Trade Representative, and seeing where they've got to go from here. And Phil, it was interesting. Obviously, the president announced something that we had reported previously, that third round of 2019 MFP payments is going to be coming. But now everyone's wondering, what are they going to do about 2020? And Perdue seemingly, on one hand, saying it's probably not going to happen. On the other hand, sort of leaving the door open for it.
Yeah, he's, on the one hand, Secretary Perdue is really trying to project confidence and optimism that China is going to lived up to the deal, make all these purchases, $80 billion over 2 years, $36.5 billion this year, and that would take care of the farm economy this year. But if they don't do another MFP, there's a lot of farm income to make up. Mm-hmm. These markets are really going to have to move. They haven't so far, but again, Secretary Perdue is projecting a lot of optimism. But as you say, pressed him on that issue of a new MFP in 2020, and his bottom line was, look, the president has demonstrated, almost his exact words, the president has demonstrated that he will do whatever it takes to preserve the ag sector. So I take that for what it's worth, but it sure sounded like he was not closing the door to another MFP if these sales don't move the market.
Because it's worth noting, last year, after the 2018 MFP was wrapped up, and almost as soon as it was announced, really, Perdue was adamant in saying that, this is not something producers should count on in 2019. And months of him saying that sort of undone via presidential tweet in late May.
So we well remember that tweet.
So
right in the middle of planting season.
Right in the middle of planting season, and details needed to emerge after that. But whether or not that situation is reflective of and informing this situation we're seeing right now is probably only known to about one person in all of Washington D.C. But we'll obviously keep an eye on that and all of the various comings and goings on the trade front as we continue to watch how this is going to impact American agriculture and your operation more specifically. But I think that's going to do it for this week. If you're looking for more information on all of the things we've talked about, we've got articles up on Agri-Pulse.com. Also up a new dairy podcast myself and Ben Nulley have been working on, so hope you'll watch and listen to that and appreciate that as well. But I think that's going to do it for this week. So for Phil Brasher, I'm Spencer Chase. Have a good one.